Hi guys, so today I'm going to be talking about water, its structure, and its properties. So water consists of two hydrogen atoms covalently bonded to one oxygen atom. So water is a dipole molecule, which means that both its hydrogen atoms are slightly electropositive and its oxygen atom is slightly electronegative. Here I've just added that the bond angle is 105 degrees. Water is also able to form hydrogen bonds with other water molecules. So the hydrogen bonds will form between the slightly electropositive hydrogen atom and the slightly electronegative oxygen atom of another molecule. So hydrogen bonds are really important, and you'll see them a lot in the next section. So next we're going to talk about the properties of water. All in all, there are 11. So we're going to talk about each of them in depth, but I actually came up with a way to remember them, which you guys can use. So basically the first letter of each property is the same. So Penny's father had high hopes until she didn't win big world tournament, which is a way that you guys can use to remember these properties. So the first property is that it's a polar molecule. So this makes water a good solvent. Now why does it do that? It's because water is able to dissolve other polar molecules such as sugar. And that's why it is known as the universal solvent. Okay, so next, water has forces of cohesion and forces of adhesion. Now, forces of cohesion in water occur between water molecules. So it occurs between water and still water. So an example where we can see forces of cohesion is actually in the xylem. So the fact that water can travel up the xylem in a continuous column shows that there are forces of cohesion between the water molecules, and this is due to the hydrogen bonding between those water molecules. Therefore, we now know what makes the continuous flow of column of water in the xylem possible. Okay, next, forces of adhesion. So these forces occur between water and a different material. So in the case of the plant, it occurs between water and the walls of the xylem. So while the forces of cohesion allowed a continuous column of water to be formed, forces of adhesion allow the water to travel upwards in the xylem vessel because it is able to adhere to the walls of the xylem vessel. So the next property of water is that it has high surface tension. So here I've drawn a bug on the surface of water, and it does not sink, instead it's able to float. So why do you think it doesn't fall? It doesn't fall because water has a very high surface tension, and this means that it acts like an elastic skin due to the cohesion forces between the water molecules. So because of this, certain insects, such as in this case a pond walker, is able to make its habitat on top of the surface of water, since it won't fall and sink and drown. Then we have the thermal properties of water. So water has a high latent heat of fusion, and this basically means that it absorbs a large amount of energy in order to change from liquid into gas. This process is known as evaporation. So applying it to daily life, it's very important for living things. This property of water is very important to living things because when we sweat, the water on the surface of our body actually evaporates. And since water has such a high latent heat of fusion, a lot of heat energy is absorbed by the water in order for it to evaporate. Therefore, heat is released from our body and our body cools down. That maintains the temperature inside our body temperature. So next, water has a high specific heat capacity. So this basically means that heat needed to raise the temperature of 1 kilogram of water by 1 degree Celsius is very high. Take for example, a very hot sunny day at the pool. So the air in the atmosphere is going to be really hot. However, once you get into the pool, you notice that the water is actually still cool, even though the surroundings are very hot. And this is due to the high specific heat capacity. Water has to absorb a large amount of heat before it can increase in temperature. This is very important in nature as well because it prevents large fluctuations in temperature and provides a stable environment for aquatic organisms. Alright, so next we need to discuss the density of water versus ice. So if you've ever had a cup of cold water with ice in it, you'll notice that the ice floats on top of the water. Now we must know that ice is a solid and water is a liquid. Now usually solids are denser than liquids, but here we see ice floating on top of water. So this means the ice is less dense than water. Now, unlike other substances, water expands as it freezes, which means that there are more spaces between the water molecules, and therefore its volume increases and its density decreases. Now, why is this useful? So in nature, when winter comes around, only the top of the pond will be frozen, and since ice is denser than water, it will float to the surface, leaving a liquid water column below that is not extremely cold, so that the fish can still survive past winter. So next is transparency. So water is transparent, therefore letting light pass through it. And since light can penetrate through it, aquatic plants at the seabed are able to photosynthesize. So it allows photosynthesis to occur. Water also acts as a metabolite. So this means that it is a reactant in many metabolic reactions. It is therefore referred to as a metabolite. So examples of reactions would be hydrolysis, where, for example, starch is hydrolyzed into maltose in the presence of water and the enzyme amylase, or photosynthesis, where water and carbon dioxide are converted into glucose or oxygen. Now, the last two properties of water are that it provides buoyancy and support to many living things. So for aquatic organisms that have very large body mass, such as whales, actually don't have a very large or strong skeleton to support it. Instead, it is supported mainly by water buoyancy. Without water, the whale would eventually die because its internal organs would be crushed by its own weight. And here we can see that water also helps to act as a pollinating agent for many different types of plants, or to spread the plant's sort of offspring. Here we can see a coconut dropping from the tree and being washed into sea, and then finally reaching land again, and then it will then grow and develop into a new coconut tree. Similarly, for support, water is important to maintain turgidity in plants and allows them to remain upright to get maximum exposure to sunlight. And then lastly, water acts as a transport medium in plants, as we know about the xylem transporting water to all parts of the plant, and also in humans. So water makes up a large portion of semen and blood. So in blood, it actually transports all different kinds of things like nutrients, waste products being carbon dioxide or urea. It also transports nutrients or digested food, and different types of cells. So here I've drawn a few, which are the red blood cell, white blood cell, and platelets. And in the semen, it will transport the sperm when reproduction occurs. So those have been the properties of water. They are quite easy to understand, however, they're very important, especially when you're explaining the upcoming chapters in AS. So definitely pay attention to this subtopic in Unit 1. Thank you for watching!